good day. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. Today is August 23rd, 2023. I'm joined, as always, by Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford, fresh off of his interview with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith just minutes ago.
The Premier says hello.
Oh, well, top of the morning to her, too. And joined, as usual, as well, by Western Standard's senior Alberta columnist, Cory Morgan, who just came out of, chatting with colleagues in the newsroom.
Yeah, it's pretty much just sitting around gossiping.
They're not nearly as interesting, I'm sure.
No.
Do they say hello as well?
They do.
Yeah.
Okay.
When prompted.
Good. We're also going to be joined later in the show by Western Standard Saskatchewan Bureau Chief Chris Oldcorn and by Western Standard business and energy reporter Sean Polzer. We're going to be talking today about, this is a funny one, a Ontario court has ordered that Jordan Peterson undergoes sensitivity training because he made some mean tweets about Justin Trudeau. Yeah, this is a real thing. I think it's called something along the lines of the Ontario College of Psychologists or whatnot, disciplining him, trying to slap him for mean tweets about Justin Trudeau and how that could traumatize his patients, even though he doesn't have any patients at the moment. And they couldn't cite a single patient complaint against him. Apparently, this traumatizes him. He said, to hell with you. He goes to court, and the court has agreed Jordan Peterson needs to attend sensitivity training. Saskatchewan, significant move there. Some of you will recall the big kerfuffle in New Brunswick. The New Brunswick government had the audacity to say that if students under the age of 16 are going to be called by a different name other than their given name or a different pronouns other than the pronouns used by their parents, well, that the parents were going to have to sign off on this for kids younger than 16. Big kerfuffle there. But Saskatchewan has picked this up. That is now going to be policy in Saskatchewan schools. You want to, school wants to call a kid by a name that's not their name or a pronoun that is not aligned with their sex. You're going to have parental sign-off for that, as well as changes to sex ed that parents are going to have a bit more say over it, and banning third parties like Planned Parenthood from participating in sex ed after some pretty raunchy, let's call it raunchy, so-called educational aids used in the classroom. Well, that's now resulted in Planned Parenthood and third parties being banned from the classroom in sex ed. So we're going to talk to our Saskatchewan Bureau Chief, Chris Oldcorn, about that soon. Stephen Guilbeault, Federal Environment Minister, gone to China, playing very nice with the Chinese. The Chinese can be dealt with when it comes to stopping global warming and the like. So we're going to talk about his trip to China and contrasting that with his interactions with the much more evil and totalitarian regime of the People's Republic of Alberta. So we're going to talk to our business reporter, Sean Polzer, about that. As well, Justin Trudeau is very angry at Facebook. He passed a law saying Facebook has to give free money to his friends in the legacy media. And Facebook said, no, we don't, because we're just not going to provide news on our platform anymore. And Justin Trudeau says, Facebook, you're killing people. There are fires going on, and without Facebook, people wouldn't know that their house is on fire. You're killing people. So Justin Trudeau, very angry, unfriending Facebook. And then, of course, a little close to home, federal news, but close to home. Chrystia Freeland, famously says she doesn't need to own a car. I live in downtown Toronto. I don't own a car. Why the rest of you yokels own cars? We can reduce our carbon by not owning cars. Well, she was driving one very recently. Not sure if it was rented or friends or whatnot, but she was driving a car and apparently doing her best impression of Fast and the Furious. Caught doing, according to reports, 142 kilometers an hour, ticketed by Alberta sheriffs at 142 kilometers an hour in a 100-kilometer zone. I thought that gets your license taken away or an automatic court appearance or something, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But an interesting little story that I don't think would be otherwise newsworthy other than that she's anti-car. But when she gets one, boy, she sure loves using it then. Okay, before we get started, though, we're going to thank my favorite sponsor, the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. You know what? Cory, why don't you thank CSSA today?
I can't thank the CSSA enough. I mean, as a firearms owner, if you want somebody standing up for you and making sure you can maintain that right to be a firearms owner. You can't get a better group than those guys and Bernardo and the rest doing that. And yes, as well, lots of resources and things going on at the CSSA, everything from links to upcoming sporting events or just proper firearm usage. So like any other association, you should be a member if you own firearms, and it's an investment in your rights. Go to CSSA, CSSA-CILA.org, or as we always say, just Google them, get there, and it's well worth it.
All right. Well, we're going to start with the story with Jordan Peterson here. So this goes back, I don't know, at least 6 months ago, maybe longer. But yeah, there was this crazy news that the Ontario College of Psychologists, if I'm getting the name right, something like that, they just disciplined him. Said, bad, Jordan. The college could not cite a single patient, current or in the history of Jordan Peterson's very long practice, that had filed a complaint here. So no actual complaints from anyone who's ever been a patient of Jordan Peterson, but so presumably complaints from people who have nothing to do with him. But in there, they cited mean tweets he had made about Justin Trudeau, that he does not like Justin Trudeau, some unflattering things he said about Justin Trudeau, his positions on various public policy issues. Apparently, all of this makes him unfit to do his job as a psychologist. Well, Jordan Peterson became famous to begin with for not giving an F about what the authorities tell him he has to say or what he cannot say. And so it's no surprise to anyone that he does not comply. So he takes it to court, because these things can be appealed to a court. And the Ontario courts have ruled that it was a, quote, minimal intrusion on his freedom of speech. Such a Canadian ruling. We don't really care about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is there as long as it doesn't conflict with anyone's feelings. And, feelings, that's what really matters here. And so, yeah, it might be a minor inconvenience to his freedom of speech, but it'll be a big help to people's feelings if he doesn't have mean tweets about Justin Trudeau. Nigel, what do you think the fallout of this is going to be? Because I have an inkling that Jordan Peterson is not going to be attending the court-ordered sensitivity training anytime soon. I suppose the consequence of that will be that if he doesn't, they can revoke his license. What do you think the actual consequences of this will be if he does not attend the court-ordered sensitivity training?
Well, just what you said, they pull his license. Actually, I wish he would go and live stream it.
I'm actually thinking that might be more fun.
But I know the college is not going to go for that, because anything that could bring the profession into further disrepute, they would stay away from. But I would guarantee you that if it were live streamed and if he did go through with it, they'd make them look like fools, which of course is what they are.
Corey, what do you think would be better? Him thumbing his nose and saying, screw you, I'm not going, take my license away, because he's not actually really, I don't believe he's actually practicing clinically anymore with patients. He's doing other things, making way more money than I think he could as a psychologist. What's better, him thumbing his nose, because that sends a good message, but as Nigel says, would it be better for him to just live stream this?
It'd be like Ezra Levant at the Human Rights Commission when he attended, but then just blasted them for the entirety of the interview. I mean, if Peterson put his feet up like an intransigent student that I'm sure he dealt with in some of his classes and just coasted through it and made a mockery of it, though, I mean, I guess, it would be entertaining, but it would also undercut the seriousness of what's happened. I mean, it's not going to hurt him. He's selling books. He's got the speaking circuit. He's got the courses. But the cancel mob have realized a new way to shut people down, and that's to go after their professional associations. Mm-hmm. And that's scary. And not everybody can afford to thumb their nose at it like Jordan Peterson can. So I hope he does keep fighting, because he's fighting for more than just himself on this.
So we were talking about this offline, Nigel. Because it's not going to be a hit to him. He's not really practicing. So if they take his license away, well, all they're doing is the college is denigrating itself. But it might send a real chill through the spine of everyone else in the profession who doesn't kind of worship at the same altar as these guys. That, okay, fine, Jordan Peterson has the means to say, screw you, I take my license away. What are you going to do? It's not going to hurt me. But there'll be a bunch of smaller fish in Ontario who are psychologists who, aren't with the program yet, haven't gone through official re-education, if you will, or sensitivity training, whatever we call it. This could send a real chill through the entire profession, or the professions in general, that they can use this to shut you up.
Yes, well, that is why this case matters. I mean, as far as you say, with Jordan Peterson, all that will happen is he'll put his fees up, and people will be glad to pay them, because now not only is he the voice of reason, he's also a martyr to reason. You know, in one sense, the college is working against itself. But you're right, the word will filter down through the levels, and not just in the professions, but also to just people on the street. Because what comes out in the end is, well, you know, you can't say that anymore. Look what they did to Peterson, not realizing that they did nothing to Peterson, but there is this chill effect. That's what they're after. They want to control speech. You mentioned just now, and you were right, that it is not just the psychologists. We've got the same thing happening right here in Alberta with the Law Society. They are trying to define what lawyers think and speak about and should say. Medical associations across the country have
during COVID, they tried to strip the credentials of people who disagree with lockdowns and mandates.
It's people still struggling with that stuff. So these professional associations are very kind of a behind-the-scenes type of influence, but they're real. And the Peterson case just shows that beautifully. It's very dangerous.
Cory, I've generally liked the idea of professions regulating themselves for the most part, but they can be a bit gatekeepery sometimes. Some of these professional associations will limit numbers coming in as a way of creating artificial scarcity, thereby increasing their own value in the market. But this is a new kind of game, I think. Maybe it's happened before in other forms, but at least in my lifetime, I can't recall professional associations becoming this inherently political, this inherently involved in the latest social and political issues, and so strictly defining what is the politically correct thought, what is right thinking at the time. Do you think the answer might be to clip the wings of these associations, to take away some of their self-governance if they're doing it? What do you think?
Well, it's a tough area. Yeah, I mean, you take away the self-governance. Well, there has to be a regulatory body for some of these in some sort of sense. And I don't trust the government to be any better at it.
No, I'm not. What's the answer?
In fact, they would be worse. And when it's a mandated membership in order to ply your trade, you have no choice but to comply. I don't have an easy answer. Pushing back, the members of these organizations, they're supposed to be member-driven. So, I mean, the members have to stand up, and they have to stand up for each other, and they're quietly sitting by the sidelines while Peterson gets battered. It's unfortunate. We should be seeing more psychologists standing up saying, hey, this isn't what I'm part of this association for.
Well, they're so obviously Canadian courts, I have such a loathing, lack of respect for. They're so political, and the American courts are political as well, but at least there are some checks and balances in the process. They actually get vetted going in, whereas here it's really just whoever the prime minister or the premier for the lower courts wants.
Well, they vet the donations to the party.
Yes, there is a vetting to make sure donors get in. Maybe the answer is just more in the legislative framework around this. The government, I certainly wouldn't want the government involved in any of the minutia of these professions. Leave them self-governing, but there is legislation that sets out the framework of what they can do.
Define a little bit more of what's unprofessional. I mean, there are things that could have been done unprofessionally online that perhaps they would step in on, not in the case of Peterson, but if he'd have been on there being perverse, if he'd have been harassing people on there or stalking people. I mean, there's things where they might want to say you're not representing
political views.
That was an opinion they had a problem with.
Yeah.
And then, maybe they need something in their mandate to say, no, this has
clearly
to be behavior.
The courts have no interest in supporting this at all. They think it's just fine.
Wow.
It's a typical Canadian ruling where freedom of speech is acknowledged to exist, but it is subordinate to everything else.
I think what you're looking at is the result of the long march through the institutions that the revolutionaries first started talking about in the 1960s. They've gone into the universities, they've gone into the teachers' training colleges. The people who came out of the university and the teachers' training colleges and went into the schools. And finally, we're starting to see a generation of people who actually genuinely do not believe in free speech. And they do want to see society molded in a certain way. And they are the ones who are now in the professional associations and driving this bus. And unfortunately, the people who are best qualified to stop them are usually the very best of the best, and they're too busy making money to take an interest in the professional association. So it's not like this. It's not like this is a judo move by a small group. No. This is mainstream.
All right, we're going to switch it up now. We're going to bring in our Saskatchewan bureau chief based in Regina, Chris Oldcorn. Chris, big changes to sex ed in Saskatchewan. I think maybe set the table for us. I think this kind of comes after the big brouhaha in New Brunswick. And I guess Saskatchewan looked at it and said, that's a good idea.
Yes, thanks, Derek. Yeah, they did. And they actually went a step further than any other province has so far in Canada by also excluding all third-party organizations. So that would include Planned Parenthood and also ARC, which is in charge of the SOGI training that's going on in the schools. So they're reviewing all of that material before any of it can be taught in the classroom. And teachers are the only ones who can actually teach sexual ed going forward. And then you also have, if your kid wants to change their name or pronouns and they're under the age of 16, there has to be a parent meeting connected to that with the school. So they are making major changes to the way things were being done here. And definitely the sex cards in the Lumsden High School was a big catalyst for that. And in the recent by-election in Lumsden, that was a major factor in the actual election.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it you who broke that story about Planned Parenthood's sex cards?
That is correct. Yes, we did break the story, and it even got picked up in international media as well eventually.
Yeah, well, maybe elaborate on that. I think that's an issue in Saskatchewan. I think a lot of people outside of Saskatchewan don't know. So this was Planned Parenthood, for some reason, involved in sex education in schools, and they brought some, let's call them very graphic cards into the classroom. Tell us a bit about what happened here and then what the government's reaction was when you broke the story.
So basically what happened was Planned Parenthood was in a grade 9 class at Lumsden High School doing a sexual education presentation. Now, it wasn't part of the presentation, but they had this other table with other materials on it, including the sex cards. And the Planned Parenthood person who was doing the presentation grabbed one of the decks, gave it to some kids at a table, and they started reading through it. And it's like, you're supposed to ask this, and do they know what this is and stuff. And they were straight up. I mean, Jerry Ritz said it pretty good. He called them pornographic and nothing short of that. As a matter of fact, we ended up only printing the words off of 3 of the cards and only printing 2. And there was one for every letter of the alphabet because they would, a lot of them, there's an open RCMP investigation into this right now. 2 students have already given statements to the police about it, and it is an ongoing investigation because those cards were way over the line of what should be considered acceptable. Yeah. And media had to censor themselves on what we could even say. I
don't want to put you on the spot because we haven't really prepared. I didn't say I'd tell you in advance we're going to do this, but are there any greatest hits, some of the most outrageous cards that they gave to these children that you might be able to remember off the top of your mind?
Well, I thought for sure.
Like butts. I don't know.
Well, there was something called dangles, which is when there's toilet paper on someone's bum, you might find if you're in that area.
Yeah.
Amongst others. I did think
dingleberries.
Yeah, dingleberries. Yeah.
Dingleberries.
Yes.
So was it like, how was it? Was it like D is for dingleberries or?
Correct. Yep. It was literally one for every letter of the alphabet. I honestly thought that I was going to get H right at heterosexual, but it wasn't. It was called half and half. Oh. Yeah, so even heterosexual didn't make the deck.
What is half and half without going too beyond PG-13? I don't know.
I can't do it going. I'll tell you off air, but I can't really say it on half air.
You know what we'll do is we're going to put this behind the paywall, so only members.
Yeah,
this is going to be a members-only feature on the Western Standard. Chris,
also,
can you?
One more thing.
You go ahead.
The organization that distributed those cards took them off their website after the whole kerfluffle happened, and we are actually one of the only ones with a full deck. So we actually have the PDF of the original cards.
You got it here. Chris is the only one working with a full deck in Saskatchewan.
I'm the only one working with a full deck here in Saskatchewan because I went and got it before they took it down.
Chris, okay, we're gonna have to talk about this after, but I think we should PDF all these cards, and we're gonna put this as a members-only article on the Western Standard. So if you want to see what colorful things are being shown from Planned Parenthood and recently the government of Saskatchewan to children there, you're going to have to be a member. And it's going to have to be members only, because we're going to have to say, like, are you 18 plus to view this content or something? You know, we don't want kids getting this stuff.
Oh
yeah. I have a PDF of them all. Yep, we're good to go. You do it as a sign-up. You can do it as a sign-up bonus or something.
All right.
You figure out the promo.
All right, we'll talk to Dave about it. But you heard it here. Check back within 24 hours, and you'll be able to get full access to new X-rated material on the Western Standard. There'll be a special members-only section. But hey, this stuff was at least temporarily given in Saskatchewan classrooms, so it must be appropriate, right? Okay, and has there been any pushback since the announcement around pronouns? I know in New Brunswick, the government, they got a PC government there. Atlantic conservative governments are not known for being particularly conservative, but they did a pretty common sense thing and said, kids under 18, we're not going to call them by, if your name's Bob, we're not going to call them Sue without the parents being notified here and signing off. Or if they are a boy, we're not going to call them a girl, etc. Big blow up that's happened politically there, challenges to the leadership of the premier. Has there been any pushback or any reaction from the opposition in Saskatchewan, this change around pronouns and names and stuff for kids under 16?
Well, yes, Carla Beck did say it was a new low for the government and called the policies transphobic.
Sorry, who said that?
Carla Beck, the leader of the NDP.
Okay.
She responded to it yesterday. Also, the Saskatchewan Federation of Labor president also came out and called it a violent and despicable. And called violent and despicable. Yeah, she said it. Outing children as part of a political gamble is a violent and despicable thing to do. So, and then you had outside of Saskatchewan reaction too, like the Canadian Civil Liberties Association came out with a big statement on how this was going to hurt kids at home who don't want to tell their parents and things like that. So there was reaction across.
Does anyone do we have the reaction from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association on ordering Jordan Peterson to sensitivity training for mean tweets about Justin Trudeau? Do we have that reaction? Do we have their statement here? No?
I have not seen that. No, I don't. I don't believe they'll be issuing one. On
Bueller? No, nothing. No, nothing from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association about court-ordered sensitivity training for mean tweets to the Prime Minister. Okay. All right. Well, Chris, thank you very much for your time. Did we miss anything on this one?
No. I mean, Mo came out in support of it, obviously, because it was his Minister of Education. But yeah, the only interesting part that we haven't mentioned is that in two different meetings Planned Parenthood had with the Education Minister, they said they were interested in moving away from delivering classroom material, which they've now been removed from anyways. So
yeah. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
All right.
Chris, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Derek.
All right. Well, good for Saskatchewan.
Gotta love it.
With these violent outbursts by the government of Saskatchewan.
Well, that's Gil McCowan's counterpart over there. So it's good to know that their head of the labor is as crazy as ours is.
Yeah, good to know that the union movement is standing up to make sure that children can be called by incorrect pronouns without their permission.
Did you notice the fast and loose use of the language here? It is actually not violent when you say something.
Well, but words are violence.
Words, even silence is violence, according to.
But violent rioting, that's speech. That's free speech. So you see what they've done here. Actual violence, hurting people, burning property, destroying property, attacking people, that's not violence. That's free speech. But saying something like someone's pronouns given to them by their parents, that's violence.
So in all seriousness, one of the jobs as writers that we have is to try and maintain control of the language. Lord knows it's difficult because it is intentionally twisted and turned by the activist part of society. But, when you say something, it is not violence. That is, and when you do burn something, that is. We have to keep those kinds of truths very front and center.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to bring in Sean Polzer now. Sean is our energy reporter based here in our Calgary headquarters. Sean, Stephen Guilbeault headed off to China. You have to tell me if he's back yet or not, but tell us, he was going out there to do, I guess, climate diplomacy, they would call it, with the Chinese. But tell us, is he back yet, and how has this gone so far?
Well, he actually hasn't left yet. He's leaving on the 28th and until the 31st. So it's, I guess, when's the 28th? I guess that would be Monday, Tuesday in Beijing.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll back up on that. But we've had some kind of communiques from the government setting the table, the language they're using. Why don't you tell us about some of the language they're using for China when it comes to global warming issues, and then vis-a-vis the language they are using with Alberta?
Well, yeah, they seem to be taking definitely a lot softer line on China than they are here in Alberta, where they're playing hardball with Premier Smith over the electrical grid, even though that China, their grid is absolutely enormous, but they get about 63% of their electricity from coal. They burn about half the world's coal doing it. And in fact, most of that coal that actually goes to China flows through Vancouver. The port of Vancouver is one of the largest coal exporting ports, definitely in North America, but also in the world. So it is a little bit ironic. And he's a vice chair on this panel, right next to the man that used to be the chief of staff for Xi Jinping, who's like number 6 on the Communist Party hierarchy, and who's in charge of administering Hong Kong. And we all know how that's going. People in Hong Kong are rushing to get out, basically because of all the repression that's going on. So it does seem a little bit odd, that Monsieur Guilbeault would take this title, that he would even accept a title on this working board, even if it is ceremonial or regardless of even what it hopes to achieve.
Yeah, this body is, I don't know how much of you guys have seen of this, but it's an apparatus of the Communist Party, the Chinese, the CCP, and Guilbeault has an official position on it now. And all this takes place in the background of very, very serious allegations of Chinese communist interference in Canadian elections. Is he just not seeing what we're seeing? Is he just in politics, it can be hard to get perspective of yourself. It happens. But I have a hard time seeing how Guilbeault and the Liberals don't take one look at this and say, at the very least, this is a bad look, that we're going coddling the Chinese, talking to them real nice and gentle about global warming while we're trying to crush Alberta and Saskatchewan here. But we're going to go coddle the Chinese and join, as a senior member, an apparatus of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, it is absolutely insane. What is Guilbeault thinking? You say, I think it's quite possible that he is a sort of a hair-shirted idealist. Probably doesn't see the conflict, but there are enough people in the Prime Minister's office and in the Privy Council office who would absolutely see that this is a crazy thing. They would have been warned, and they're doing it anyway. And I just want to sort of emphasize something that Sean just said there about the absolute irony. The Liberal government, will not allow Alberta to export natural gas to China so that China doesn't have to build so many coal power generating stations. But they got nothing to say about Roberts Bank, where this coal is going offshore to China, to generating stations, and apparently polluting the atmosphere.
I would add too, Nigel, Seattle won't touch it. So the reason a lot of that coal is coming through Vancouver is because the American ports on the West Coast won't touch it, because they're shipping coal for electricity to China,
No, it's an absolute, like, when you look at these kinds of contradictions within government policy, never mind within the world at large, but just within government policy, you have to wonder what is the animating spirit within that government.
Yeah. Guilbeault comes by here not that long ago to Alberta, and he refused to meet with senior energy executives who ostensibly will have something to do with his grand plans for Alberta's energy grid, but just not interested in meeting with them. But he'll go meet with communist butchers who are actively involved in undermining Canadian democracy. No problem. All right. Thank you for joining us, Sean.
Thank you.
You know who doesn't like Facebook? It's China. China. They don't like Facebook. Lots of censorship on Facebook. And as you all know, we've got a lot of censorship on Facebook now. Actually, Canada, arguably, outside of probably North Korea, would have probably the most censored Facebook feed of any country on the planet, barring North Korea. Now, it's not that the government passed a bill banning the news from Facebook. It's that the government passed a bill that Facebook says would result in them having no choice but to censor the news from Facebook, which is what they've done. Much to the shock of the government, Facebook did exactly what it said for the last year and a half before Bill C-18 was passed. They did exactly what they said they would do. And now they're trying to score points with the fires. So Trudeau and his guys are saying, wow, and the CBC in particular has got some, pulling on heartstrings saying, please lift the ban on CBC for these fires in Yellowknife. So no one in Yellowknife would know there's fires unless you could read the CBC on Facebook. But I think what we're getting now is an admission from the government, an admission from the CBC, an admission from the Torstar and Post Media, all these crooks who were saying that having our links on your platforms was stealing from us. Now they're saying not having our links on your platforms is an attack on democracy. So I don't know. Are they able to hear? Can they hear themselves out loud?
Well, they're desperate and they're floundering. They've backed themselves in a corner and they won't back down. I mean, they will not repeal this thing. Meta called their bluff and said, fine, we'll stop linking. And you know what? No matter what is coming now, even if it was just short term for an emergency, and if Zuckerberg felt, I feel bad about this, I'll lift it just during the fire. No. Because now you're opening the door for them to extort from you. Now you've set the precedent post-bill of having those links on there. They're not going to do it. They're not going to stick it up there. It was an attempted shakedown. It failed. And this government, in my view, is quite pathetically.
Let's move on to the fast and furious Freeland. So this is a funny one. But let's actually play the. Oh no, I don't think it's a video. But she was quoted. Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister, Finance Minister. She was quoted in the papers saying, surprise! I don't even own a car. I live in downtown Toronto. I don't need one. I live close to the subway and blah blah blah. Well, good for you. I can see why you don't mind a carbon tax if you don't have to do much requiring carbon. For those of us who don't live in downtown Toronto, well, life isn't quite so easy. So I say that because the story we're going to talk about now, I don't think is otherwise newsworthy. I mean, it's not a criminal offense. Speeding tickets are not criminal offenses. They're provincial statute. Now, she was going particularly high over the limit, 42 over the limit in a 100-kilometer zone, according to reports. Now, this report came from Cian Bexty at the Counter Signal. They're an independent media outlet in Alberta. We credit them for the story. Notably, Post Media, which runs the Sun papers, National Post, the Herald Journal, all these other ones, they used this story and they didn't credit them. I think you should be lowering up to get these guys to pay due credit. They might not like them. They might call them all sorts of nasty names. You take someone's story, you credit them. We credit the CBC, for God's sakes. And we don't like doing it. We cringe a bit when we have to credit the CBC or Torstar. But that's what you do as a professional courtesy. And in fact, it arguably might be a matter of copyright to be stealing that. But Anyway, we'll start with you, Corey. Is it newsworthy that the deputy premier's got the pretty hefty speeding ticket up in the Peace Country?
Sure, it's nothing to break into the middle of a football game for with breaking news, but it's worth noting.
Unless he's driving a white Bronco, and we've got the helicopter. You know that okay.
But she put herself on that pedestal, and this is the second time she's been slapped since putting herself on that pedestal. Because the first time was when it was found the chauffeur was saying, "Well, yeah, but it was expenses for all these other days." So no, technically, she didn't need a car and she didn't drive, but she had a private chauffeured SUV on the bill of the taxpayer. So it makes it a little different now, doesn't it, Madam Freeland? But now as well with, okay, you're in Alberta, you rented a vehicle or borrowed or presumably or something like that. Fine. But again, the least we would hope for is you drive it responsibly. Do you know your fuel consumption goes up dramatically when you start speeding?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard, carbon. I mean, I don't speed, but you know.
She killed 3 polar bears on that trip.
Oh, yeah. So hypocrisy is always newsworthy, particularly when it comes to the deputy prime minister. This isn't just a liberal backbencher either. This is a very senior position.
Nigel, I don't know. Do you think this does any chink in the armor of the Liberals?
Well,
I think not.
No, it's been played for laughs. I'm actually, I'm just going to go off message a little bit, and I'm going to say this on Chrystia Freeland's behalf. This and this only, and only this once. But, if she had got legitimate business up there in Peace River, then, and she probably did, and she had ordered a government car at vast expense from the little fleet they keep in Edmonton, that would be a story too. You'd be getting the chauffeur's chit, and you'd be getting the mileage, and you'd find what it cost. As it was, even if she expensed it, she just went and she got a car from somewhere, and she did what she had to do. Maybe it was just personal business.
Probably. Actually, she's from that area.
Yeah, she is from that area, so maybe just seeing
probably
relatives.
Personal.
So, she was never going to win on this one. She was either going to, what she didn't have to do was to put the boot down and roll coal, as we have on our little meme there.
I don't care. Like, our speed limits are too low. I think we should actually have an Alberta bond. So, like, build out our highways enough, and in the areas where it's straight and it's level, drive as fast as you want, as long as we've got some good rules on the road. Slow traffic stays right, that kind of thing.
Well, watch out for deer.
Yeah. I gotta get one of those deer cages on my truck.
Yeah. The thing is, the environmentalists, I mean, there's some that I respect, and that's the ones that walk the walk. I think of celebrities even. I think it's Ed Begley Jr. He actually lives in a small house. He rides his bike, does things he can. Versus DiCaprio, who's in a giant yacht, who's telling us not to consume more stuff. Or Guilbeault flying all over
they fly around
world.
And then when you're driving, I mean, was she using a Tesla? Do we know if she was driving? We should find out what kind of car she was using, because I guess it wouldn't have been that much more in emissions if she was.
It was electric. Yeah. Well, then it would have been charged through a coal generating plant up in northern Alberta.
I was meeting with someone yesterday. I can't say who, but I was in a meeting yesterday, and told me a funny story. He saw, it was just in the last few days, he saw someone driving a Tesla around Calgary, and he says this was the only vanity license plate he's ever liked. I thought it was good. He's driving a Tesla, and the license plate was coal powered. So he was aware. And I mean, like, I've never driven a Tesla, but apparently they're a pretty good ride. They're fast, they're powerful, they're just grossly expensive. But I mean, if you want to drive a Tesla, drive a Tesla. Just don't think you're morally superior about it. And apparently this guy, that's what he was. He wanted the Tesla. He just didn't feel morally superior about it. So kind of disclosed that, I'm driving a Tesla, but I know what powers the Tesla at the end of the day.
My neighbor says it's like driving your phone. So
that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
Give me a switch, something I can turn off and on.
I like to hear some vroom when I drive, and those are pretty quiet.
I've seen that with I think some of the sports models of
they have fake sounds.
They have the sounds and the vibration because they can't get the high-end sports cars purchasers. We're talking the 6-figure cars. To get in, they want to feel it, so they've actually simulated it within the vehicle so they can get that feel while they drive. Because I guess they really do pick up and go as fast as a carbon.
They're apparently a good drive.
Yeah, but you just don't get that feel. So the real expensive ones
probably take off like a rocket.
That's SpaceX, different Elon company. Yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap it up there. Nigel, Corey, thank you for joining.
It was fun.
And thank all of you for joining us today. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandard.news right now. Click on membership. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year to get unlimited access to all of our content and our network of reporters across the West. And of course, we need your support. The Western Standard has refused to take the federal government's media bailouts, and we are attacked constantly by federal legislation like C-18, meant to bail out our competitors, but ends up blowing up in the media's face anyway and limiting our reach. So we very much need you to support us with your monthly subscriptions. So thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless.
Here's an update on commodity prices in Lethbridge, where we've had about an inch of rain over the past few days. Cash barley is down $5 at $3.65, feed wheat is steady at $3.79, and corn is down $5 at $3.76 per metric ton. In the milling wheat market, September Minneapolis futures added 9.5 cents at $7.83 per bushel, with local harder red spring bid for August movement at $10 per bushel. Looking at canola, November futures are higher $6.40 at $802.40 per ton, with delivered buys for September movement at $17.85 per bushel. In the pulse markets, nearby red lentil prices remain at 33 cents per pound, and yellow peas are trading at $10.20 per bushel. And looking at cattle, October live cattle are up 35 cents at $178.30 per hundredweight. For more information on pricing or picked up options, give me a call at 403-394-1711. I'm Matt Busicum at Marketplace Commodities, accurate real-time marketing information and pricing options.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited